So today we're going to be talking about Der Erlkönig by Schubert with the poem by Goethe. And before we kind of jump into a theory analysis of this, I think it is important to talk about the lyrics and the story of the piece first, because that ties into a lot of the kind of musical motifs and the harmonic analysis that we see here. So I think we're going to look at the lyrics first. And so the story of this piece is essentially a father and a son riding late at night, and they're being chased by Erlkönig translates to Elf King, or Erlking. And it's essentially like this very enticing, devilish sort of character that's trying to draw the son in. And eventually he harms the boy, and then the story ends with the son dying, unfortunately, which is, part of the music. Actually, it's very interesting. But the lyrics are, it's in German, but I have the translation written in my song, but it's, "Who rides so late through the night and wind? It is the father with his child. He has the boy in his arms. He holds him safely. He keeps him warm." And so, also, there's 5 characters in this story. There's the narrator, the son, the father, the elf king, and the horse. And we see in the music these repeated eighth notes all throughout. The repeated eighth note triplets are actually supposed to be representing the galloping of the horse. And so we start off with the narrator singing, and then it goes to the father, then to the son, to the father, and the elf king. So it switches the text between all these characters, and the horse is implied through it because you always have these eighth note triplets, except when the elf king sings, we see that the eighth note triplets disappear and it becomes the elf king's theme. But so there's very interesting things to look at with each of the different characters, but the person singing it typically takes on like a different narration voice for each character. But we're going to listen to the song, but just some things to think about while you're listening to it is one of the main things is this song utilizes is modulation. So it'll start off in minor, and then it'll shift to another minor key, but then it'll be in major every time the Elf King sings. It modulates to a major key to kind of represent that. Sorry, let me see. Like the first time the Elf King sings, we are in B flat major. And it's kind of supposed to be representing the enticement of the Elf King and its facade of goodness. And then it'll shift back to minor whenever the sun sings again. There's that. But we're going to watch a YouTube video of this, and then we're going to dive into the music. So I think we're just going to go piece by piece here. So we start off, and that is the narrator speaking, and we start off in our home key of G minor. And he's asking the question, who rides so late through the night and wind? And he asks this question in a dominant function first, with the cadence point here, the 1/6/4 to the 5. And then he answers it as we switch to a major key, to B flat major. He answers it in a major key. It is a father with his child. He has the boy in his arms. He holds him safely. And then we go into a borrowed harmony, a mode mixture of the diminished 7 chord here to kind of represent a forebodingness. And then we go back into G minor. Lost my train of thought there. We go back into G minor as the music switches back, and cadence is the authentic cadence into G minor, which is our home key again. And so now we're going to listen to the father speak. But he's in a minor key to represent his concern. Now the lyrics here are, "My son, why do you hide your face so anxiously?" So keep that in mind as we listen.
Mein Sohn, was fährst du so bang dein Gesicht? Siehst Vater, du den...
That's the son. Oopsies. Anyways, so then it goes, "Father, do you not see the Elf King?" And we go back, and now we go to C minor. And every time we see that the father is speaking, it's in a lower range, and then it goes to a higher range to represent the sun, the youthfulness of the sun. So he asks his question in C minor, "Do you not see the Elf King?" So then, right there, we go back into B flat major. Because when he said the Elf King with crown, der Erlkönig mit Kron und Schweif, every time the Elf King is mentioned, we modulate into a major key, and the relative major of G minor is B flat major, and all of these modulations are going to be common tone modulations. As you can see in the piano part, we always have that G, and so it's modulating to the relative major. Some mode mixture down here with the 2 diminished chord, to bring in a little bit of that minor sense, a little bit of forebodingness as the Elf King is mentioned, but genuinely a major feel, because we're supposed to be lulled into a false sense of security with this Elf King. And every time the father sings, it's interesting, the first time he sings, it's completely in major. The second time he sings, it's half in major, half in minor, and then the last time he sings, it's in minor. And that's representing the first time he's very sure, the second time he's getting a little concerned, half major, half minor, but he's still trying to keep his spirits up. And the last time, he's very concerned, very much trying to keep his child safe. So we'll go back to the father reassuring in a major key.
Mein Sohn, es ist ein Nebelstreif.
And then now we go to the Elf King. See, we're still in a major key. then the father said, no, it's just a wisp of the fog. But the Elf King now comes in, and we see that the horse motif disappears, that the galloping sound of the horse has disappeared, and now it's this kind of sweet, melodic, but still a little bit concerning motif of the Elf King. And so he comes in a major key. Do you, dear child, do you want to come with me? Do you want to go with me? I have very lovely games. I'll play with you. Some colorful flowers on the shore. My mother has some golden robes. And so he's trying to get the sun to come with him. And so we see a lot of dominant function, a lot of 1 to 5 to 1 to 5. A little secondary dominant there to kind of, I'll play with you. The secondary dominant there, that's a little bit like, I'll play with you, but what does play with you mean? That's kind of a little concerning. So let's listen to that part.
Liebes Kind, komm, geh mit mir, gar schöne Spiele spiel ich mit dir. Manch bunter Blumen sind an dem Strand, meine Mutter hat manch kühlen gewandt, mein Vater.
And so then we go back into the son's part, where he says, my father, do you not hear what the Elf King quietly promises me? So we shift back into G minor rather abruptly, back into its relative minor, and every time that the son sings, it shifts into a higher key, but he's screaming out on the ninth, on the flat ninth of that chord. And so the increased chromaticism, what I find really interesting here, where we're going to listen, right here, it's a very chromatic motion from the minor 1 to the 5/6 minor 1, 7 diminished of 2 to the 2, secondary dominant there again, bringing us into B minor. It's supposed to be building in stability and tension, and also when it's coupled with those eighth note triplets, you really get that sense of, oh, the horse might be speeding up now.
Mein Vater, und hörst du nicht, was Erlenkönig mir leise verspricht?
So then we go now into a lower minor key, again a common tone modulation, into B minor, because every time the father sings, again, we have to show that it's an older person, so it's a lower minor key, and he's like, be calm, stay calm, it's just the wind rustling through the wind. And so now we see that he's reassuring him half in minor up here for the first half, and then we see that it modulates with a pivot chord in a common chord in a 82 to G major. And so he's kind of less assured than he was before. And then it is again in major for the Elf King.
Bleib ruhig, mein Kind, in dürren Blättern säuselt der Wind.
So then when the Elf King comes in, we have do you want to come with me, pretty boy? My daughters shall wait on you finely. He repeats that again, and rock and dance and sing you to sleep. And so he's in C major, and then we have sequential modulations from C major to A minor when he says my daughters shall wait on you finally, and that's kind of bringing in this, ooh, that is a little concerning. He's just trying to like lure him in, but then it goes to G major, and then back to C major, and those are sequential modulations, because we're just having the same sequence, but in a different key, and it's a step higher before, his second, a step higher before than when he sang. So it was in B flat major, and now it's in C major, and so we see also now a new accompaniment style, and he's trying new techniques to try and lure this boy in. Oopsies.
Feiner Knabe, du mit mir gehen, meine Töchter sollen dich warten schön, meine Töchter führen die nächtlichen Rhein und wiegen und tanzen und singen dich ein, sie wiegen und tanzen und singen dich ein. Mein Vater, mein...
Okay, and then we see now the son screaming out again, because we've now modulated to A minor, with a common tone, and now he's screaming out again, my father, do you not see there the elf king's daughter's gloomy palace? And so again, we see this chromatic tension build again, the same motif as we saw before. It modulates a third up now to C sharp major, and what we've seen before is it's gone to closely related keys, but now every single key change from now on, every single modulation is now to a distinct key. So as the song goes on, the father and the son are getting more distant, and it's the despair is building. And so he's screaming out to his father, and then we go to the father, which is now completely in minor, as he's not really sure how much he can assure his son now. And it goes to C sharp minor, which is below A minor, because it's the father and it's in a lower key. And then it modulates to a distant key to build the tension, because the father is saying, my son, I see it clearly there shimmering, the old willows so gray. He's seeing the castle. Then we go to the elf king, who, if we see, it does not actually clearly modulate back into a major key. But we'll listen to that.
Vater, und siehst du nicht dort, Königstöchter am düstern Ort? Mein Sohn, ich sehe es genau, es scheinen die alten Weiden so grau.
And so now that we see that the son is very scared, the father is less able to reassure his child, the elf king now knows that he has a grasp on the child, so it does not actually modulate clearly into another major key. We just have tonicizing to E flat major, which is the relative major of D minor. Not relative major, sorry. Ignore me. There's a lot going on. Anyways, but it's tonicizing to E flat major with the Neapolitan chords now. He's now no longer using his major theme to entice the child, because he says, I love you, your beautiful form entices me, and if you're not willing, then I will use force. And so he's being a lot more violent now. And then it goes back to the son in B flat minor, which is a higher key, and again he screams out on the flat ninth of that 5/7. Every time that he's done this, he screamed out on the flat ninth, and he's like, my father, he's grabbing me, he's done some harm, I'm hurt, and so now the father doesn't respond, and we're only handled now by the narrator, as it ends. We've gone into G minor now, another distant key. It horrifies the father. He swiftly rides on. He holds the moaning child in his arms. He reaches the farm with trouble and hardship, and in his arms, the child has died. And we see that it tonicizes again with the Neapolitans when he reaches the farm here as a kind of a false sense of security, and then the child has died. And it is in a very morose ending, and then we end, kind of ironically, on a perfect authentic cadence. And it stays in this remote key until the tonic at the very end. Oops. And again, the chromatics here represent the increasing urgency of his gallop.
Ich reizt deine schöne Gestalt, und bist du nicht wenig, so brauch ich Gewalt. Mein Vater, jetzt fasst mich an. Erlkönig hat mir ein Leids getan. Dem Vater grauset's bereit und geschwind, hält in den Armen das ächzende Kind. Reicht den Hof mit Mühe und Not. In seinen Armen das Kind war tot.
We don't need that. Anyways. So yeah. Very, very morose stuff. So I think it's just a very interesting use of modulation to kind of show the relationships between all the different characters, but that's really all I had today. And